There is a moment buried in almost every hunter-gatherer culture that has ever existed, where a child stops being fed and starts feeding others. It happens in one single event, and archaeologists have found the proof of it in graves that are thousands of years old. Some of those graves belong to children, real children, small skeletons still growing, and buried next to them, fully equipped hunting gear, spear points, tools built for adults, not toys, not miniatures, the real thing. Nobody buries a child with a grown hunter's weapons by accident. Someone made a decision. Somebody looked at that small body and decided it had already earned the title before it had finished growing into it. So what actually happened to these kids? Stick around because the answer says something uncomfortable about what it really takes to become one of us. Subscribe to Chillstix before we go further. This is the kind of history that doesn't make it into textbooks. Among the Kung people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the most studied hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, anthropologists documented something called the right of the first kill. A boy could not marry, could not be considered a man until he had brought down a large animal on his own. When he did, he wasn't just congratulated, he was ritually marked, scarified by his father or another senior kinsman, his body permanently altered to record what he'd done. This wasn't a one-off custom from one isolated group. Researchers who compiled decades of archaeological and ethnographic evidence, reviewing dozens of published studies spanning every inhabited continent, found the same pattern surfacing again and again in societies that had no contact with one another. Different climates, different prey, different tools, different gods. Same underlying idea. A child does not casually slide into adulthood. There is a threshold, and crossing it is marked, on purpose, in a way the whole community witnesses. And the archaeological record backs it up, in the most literal way possible, in the ground. At a Mesolithic site in Portugal called Cabeça da Amoreira, roughly 8,000 years old, archaeologists uncovered child burials that weren't simple pit graves. One child was laid on carefully arranged layers of clay, imprinted with plant material, resting on a bed of shells, surrounded by closed cockle shells, turtle shells, and wild boar jaws, deliberately placed. Researchers studying the site described it as staged and symbolic, not just a burial, but something closer to a passage, a transformation frozen in the dirt. Different children at the same site received different treatment, some with more elaborate preparation than others. The leading interpretation is that age mattered. The older the child, the more elaborate the send-off, as if status, once earned in life, followed you into the ground. Further north, in Upper Paleolithic Europe, researchers examining ancient cave art found something even stranger. Footprints and handprints belonging to adolescents mixed in among the famous painted animals, deep inside caves that would have taken real nerve to enter in the dark. The leading theory is that these weren't decorations adolescents stumbled into. They were evidence that adolescents were formally brought into ritual spaces most people never saw, a secretive, high-stakes initiation into something bigger than themselves. Here's the part that trips people up. It's tempting to assume all of this was about survival math. More hunters, more meat, more mouse-fed. But a small child is a genuinely bad hunter. Weak arms, no reach, no patience. If calories were the only goal, handing an 8-year-old a spear was a liability, not a strategy. Archaeologists who study hunter-gatherer childhood have pushed back hard on the old cartoon image of prehistoric parenting, kids tossed into danger to sink or swim. The actual picture that's emerged from decades of research is almost the opposite. These societies invested heavily in their children, carried them, taught them gradually, buried them with visible grief and care when they died young. Which makes the first kill even stranger and even more deliberate. It wasn't about getting more meat on the fire, it was about proving something the group needed to know before they could fully trust you, that when the moment came, you wouldn't freeze, that you could feel real fear and act anyway. In a world with no police, no hospitals, no stored wealth to fall back on, that single trait, the ability to function through terror instead of collapsing, was worth almost anything else a person could offer the group. Once a child crossed that line, everything around them shifted, quietly and immediately. Researchers studying hunter-gatherer societies have found evidence in bones and teeth of sudden changes around this age. Diets shifting to match adult hunters, skeletons carrying the strain of adult-level physical work far earlier than we'd expect from a modern childhood. The body itself recorded the transition. And the ritual side of it wasn't decoration either. Anthropologists have long noted that first kill ceremonies, the marking, the shared meat, the words spoken over the child, did real psychological work. They gave a shape to something that could otherwise have been overwhelming. A small child, alone with the memory of a life ending by their hand. The ceremony didn't erase that. It gave the community a way to carry it together. That's the piece that should stop you. The same people who protected their children with real tenderness were the ones who, when the time came, handed them a weapon and walked them towards something that bled, because they understood, better than we tend to give them credit for, that survival required both. Gentleness didn't cancel out hardness in that world. They were two sides of the same relationship. Strip away the spear and the animal, and what's left is something oddly recognizable. Every culture that's ever needed its members to function under pressure has built some version of this. A moment where a person is asked to feel real fear and act anyway, because other people are counting on them. We don't hand out spears anymore. But that particular kind of courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to move through it, is a thread running from a Kalahari initiation to a Mesolithic grave in Portugal, to whatever moment in your own life first asked more of you than you felt ready to give. It's older than farming, older than cities, older than writing itself. If stories like this pull you in, hit subscribe. Chillstix digs up the strange human truths hiding underneath ancient history every week.